my name is Sonia Genet, and I'm the Director of Education at Magnum Learn. Magnum Learn is the educational branch of Magnum Photos, and we provide opportunities to learn from Magnum photographers worldwide. And we also work with partners such as Futures to deliver educational programs for photographers. You can find more info on the website, but also please follow us on Instagram. We are Magnum Learn. Today, I'm really happy for this next Magnum Futures Artist Spotlight, to be with Sheung Yiu and Anna Bulgari from Futures. Before we start, just a little bit of housekeeping. So this talk will last roughly 1 hour. There's a recording will be sent out to everyone afterwards. So in case you miss part of it or you have to leave early, don't worry. We will keep the questions for the end, but you can start putting them or asking your questions at any time during the talk. Use the Q&A function. And Sheung will have a question for you guys as well at the end, so please stay. And so you can answer that question, is an important one. And I think that's it for me. And Anna has from Futures has a little presentation about Futures to tell you all, especially for those of you that might not know about the platforms, if you want to learn more.
So thank you, Sonia. Thanks, Sheung, and thanks everyone that is here present. I will share my screen. Can you see it?
Yes, but
Oh,
it's the last slide.
Wait. Just a second. From the beginning, maybe it's better. So now you should see it properly, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
So Futures is the European platform for photography and is a collaborative network of leading institutions that deals with contemporary photography. And the aim is to support the professional development of emerging artists. How we do and what we do is to support artists by developing 4 key areas of interest. So the artistic and professional standards, resources, network, and visibility. How we do it and how we work is developing different programs. Like, for example, the educational program with Magnum that has masterclass and lectures, but also we are offering tutoring sessions that connects members, Futures members, with Futures artists. We also have developed a residency program based, research-based, that is spread in 3 different venues, Riga, Budapest, and Amsterdam. We also have networking events like the online conversations that are online events connecting artists with external experts, curators, and galleries. Every year, we organize a co-curated exhibition based on a specific theme that is showcasing Futures artists around Europe. And of course, we have the platform program. So every member, part of Futures, every year select a pool of emerging artists that will be part of a platform and will have access to all these opportunities. If you want to know more, of course, here are some images of like different exhibitions and like different events that we organized. If you want to know more about Futures, please follow us on Instagram, scout on our website, but also you can just email us if you're interested and know more. I will also put everything in the chat so you can have a look. And this is it. Enjoy the lecture.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Sheung Yiu, who was born in 1991 in Hong Kong. is an image-centered artist and researcher based in Helsinki. In his research-based practice, Hugh collaborates with multidisciplinary experts to explore imaging practices emerging at the intersection of photography and large-scale computation. Through his dialogue with remote sensing scientists, he learned how to see the Earth from satellites, and at the moment is looking at the history of face reading and facial recognition to understand how photographs become predictions. And this is what we're going to look at today. His works take the form of photography, video essays, desktop performance, exhibition, installations, and artist books. He's a doctoral researcher in photography at Aalto University. He received the CO Berlin Talent Award in 2025, was selected as Foam Talent 2024, and is a member of Futures. And thank you, Sheung, and this is your turn.
Okay, thank you, Sonia and Anna. I'm going to share my screen. Please let me know if you see the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So hi everyone, I'm Sheung, and it's great to have this opportunity to talk to you about my project. The project that I want to show you today is called Interfaces of Predictions, or How to Read a Face. And as the bio has Sonia has told you about me, I am mostly a research-based artist. I'd say my relationship with photography, it's a lot of visual studies and photographic studies, and a little of like me making images and going out and shooting. So this project, Interfaces of Predictions, it's a visual studies of faces throughout history across East and West, across different field of practices, from esoteric divination to modern technology. And so it's a story about two different practices. One is called face reading. The other is probably more familiar to you. It's called facial recognition. And I will tell you about what face reading is later on. But I thought a lot about how to, what to present and how I should approach this practice and introducing this practice to you. And I thought one way to do it is to be very transparent about it, about two timelines. So about my project timelines, how I developed it from the beginning, and also on the side, the history of different facial interpretation practices. So I use two dots as an analogy for the two practices. One kind of dot are facial landmarks. These are standardized marks that usually it's put on faces so that computer can, so a face become computer readable data. And another kind of dots, probably you still see it's on my face. It's on the right corner of my mouth. It's my mole. So the mole represents Chinese face reading and Cantonese face reading in this sense. And it all began with around 3 years ago during Lunar New Year, when I went back to my hometown in Hong Kong. I was visiting my grandma, and in my grandma's place, you can always find this book, this kind of like enigmatic, interesting book. It's called The Chinese Almanac. And in this book, there's a lot of, it's basically a collection of folk knowledges. It ranges from like an anatomical diagram of a fetus to horoscopes to classic Chinese literature. And in all these pages, one thing you'll find is these three diagrams. So you'll find a palm reading diagram. You'll find in the middle, you'll see the mold diagram, which is a diagram from Chinese face reading. And on the left-hand side, it's kind of prescriptive rules of how to interpret a face. So face reading is the mostly East Asian cultural practice of fortune telling using your face. So it's palm reading for your face. Usually it's by analyzing different parts of your face. The form and color of different facial features represents your fortune in different areas of your lifetime. And in this mole diagram, every mole on your face is a sign of something that will happen in the future. My Paul used to tell me that I'm a great eater. She will point at my mole and say that because I have this large mole next to on the right corner of my mouth, that's a sign of a great eater. So mole is an omen to your future in a sense. So I came back home to Finland and I was very interested in if other culture has similar things, because I suspect that even though face reading kind of differs from place to place, but it's something that transcends culture. I think every culture or every society would have developed something to read a person, whether in different methods. But most of my friends in Finland tell me that they don't know what face reading is, and they don't haven't even have heard of it. Which is interesting because I started going back and I'd be like, no, there has to be something. And I found that actually there is in Western culture, let's say in Europe, for example, face reading exists. It just went by another name. Let's say in this case, it goes by the name of physiognomy. So physiognomy is a practice that dates back to 17th and 18th century. And the basic principle of physiognomy is that your facial feature is a sign of your inner character. So a Swiss pastor called Johann Caspar Lavater would make these portraits, as you see on the left, these kind of silhouette portraits. He proposed and he argues that the shape of your silhouette is very telling of your character. And that a silhouette, because you can't change a silhouette easily, unlike facial feature that you can change by smiling and moving your faces. That shape it's a way for you to interpret someone's inner character. Other principle of physiognomy is very simple, as in they are correlating certain facial features and the facial similarities between animals and humans and interpreting them as such. So if you look like a fox, then you probably have the personality of a fox, which according to different culture, a fox could be cunning, could be smart. It all depends on where you come from. And then these practices popularized in the 17th and 18th century kind of is passed down. And even though it's less popular in the 20th century, it exists in books and it's recorded in books. In Vaughan's Practical Character Reader, I found these diagram that shows you what a selfish person's head looks like. And that honesty has a shape that you can tell from the silhouette or from the shape of the eye of the other person. And then, of course, facial recognition I started in the 1960s by Woodrow Bledsoe, an American computer scientist who invented a system that he called a man-machine facial interpretation system. What this system does is it tracks 5 major facial features: the brows, eyes, nose, mouth, and ears. And by matching face image to the person's identity in the database, then the machine would be able to identify, to connect a certain face image to identity. So it would be able to recognize you as a person, so to speak. And this automated facial recognition system starts with 5 facial landmarks, but it soon proliferated into different standardized landmarks. The key or the central idea behind this facial landmarks is that once we labeled every image with facial landmarks, then by analyzing the distance between 2 points, let's say between the eyes, and generally the patterns of how these points are distributed in your face, you can match that patterns to a certain identity. So it's a way of making a face computer readable. And with all these like preliminary research and book that I've read and interesting images I saw, I went back to Hong Kong to get a face reading from a face reader. So I'm gonna reshare these slides because I forgot to share the audio. Just a second. Yes. So the audio may be a little bit low, so if you can hear it, probably you need to increase the volume in on your laptop and whichever devices you're listening to.
咁嗰時有條眉基本都粗啊，定係
唔係微，如果要講上學嚟講咧，都真係幾複雜嘅，明唔明啊？你嘅眉清同埋有氣勢，即係顯示住你做嘢嘅話咧，你係都幾執着嘅，即係對你嘅專業會幾執着嘅，即係你會尋求做到好理想、好嗰個位，你先會覺得自己過關嘅，明唔明啊？呢個就係你嘅性情咯。可惜個隻眼嘅形態啊、眼神亦都唔夠鋭利啊，嚇。
Give me just a second to arrange things a little bit. So what you saw was a face reading session, a part of it, of a 20-minute session from
Wait,
Hong Kong.
Sean, one second. We're saying we don't see your presentation full screen.
Okay, just a second.
And I think it's because if you stop sharing and share again, you have to
Yes.
choose desktop one or like top left. Yes, perfect. Now we see.
Yeah. Got it. So just to continue, what you saw was a short session of a short clip from a 20-minute session that I got in Hong Kong. And face reading, to get a face reading, the face reader would analyze my face along with my life chart. So I told him when and where I was born, and then he will make a reading based on these two things he has. This diptych is trying to show you that on the left side is my life chart, and on the right side, it's these kind of makeshift temple on the same street where these fortune teller usually would have to store at. It's just to show you that besides face reading, there's this kind of hidden and underpinning Taoist cosmology and mythology behind all these interpretation. So religion and cosmology and face reading are closely intertwined. So far, it's easy to say that face reading is superstitious, to dismiss them as superstition, and that facial recognition seems to be more high-tech and more objective. But that distinction is not necessarily true. I went back to Finland and I started reading about facial recognition, and oftentimes I'll find papers like this one. This one published in 2018 by two Stanford scientists who claim that using deep neural network, they're able to tell someone's sexual orientation simply from their facial images. According to them, the most informative facial areas among men about their sexuality include the nose, eyes, eyebrows, cheeks, hairline, and chin. And their analysis says that gay men tend to have narrower jaws, longer noses, larger foreheads, and less facial hair. Which brings me to another point, is that in my point of view, one can characterize facial recognition as a sort of automated physiognomy. It's a sort of Western facial recognition, you can say. And this research by Luke Stark and Jevin Hudson really give me the vocabulary to talk about exactly what I was thinking. They call this physiognomic artificial intelligence, which they define as the practice of using computer software and related systems to infer and create hierarchies of an individual's body composition, protected class status, perceived character, capabilities, and future social outcomes based on their physical or behavioral characteristic. And they even provocatively argue that a lot of the advocates of facial recognition are snake oil salesmen. So really, this is the background of why I started this whole project, is to not only see the difference between these seemingly very kind of, different practices, but start to look at how similar they can be, the underpinning ideas and the underlying cosmology that they kind of embodied. One may be considered more prominent, the other is less acknowledged, but they both contain a certain kind of technological language and cosmological beliefs. So from my point of view, fortune telling and statistical prediction could be considered two sides of the same coin. So with this, I decided to put my face through these practices to identify 6 different practices that related to facial interpretation, facial physiognomy, face reading, facial recognition, these we know. Facial phenotyping, which I'm not going to go through it in details, but it's a practice of visualizing a face using DNA. So the idea being that certain genes corresponds to certain external characteristics that we have, for example, the color of our iris. And so that with the DNA, even though without meeting that person, you'd be able to recreate their face and know what they look like. This is used in forensic, for example, but of course is the validity of it is it's questionable because genes doesn't really sometimes have one-to-one correspondence to external facial feature. It's much more complicated than that, but this is another story. The 5th chapter is facial generation, and the 6th is facial synthetic data, which I'll tell you more later on in the presentation. So I started making images, referencing and reflecting on what I've learned about these practices, how in the age of facial recognition, facial landmarks are like fingerprints, and our identity are represented by these dots on our face. This images references the face reader in Hong Kong, who told me, after I asked him constantly, like, what are you looking at when you tell me my fortune? He told me that for your 30s, he's mainly looking at my eyes. So the left eye, each part represents different ages. So the eye white on closer to my nose is 31 and 32 years old. Iris is 33, and then the other side is 34 and 35. And by the shape and color of them, he is basically telling my fortune by using these little feature of my face. This one references Lavater's silhouette portraits. I also work with a French artist, Gilles Moustar, to make these 3D printed masks. I 3D scanned my face, and then I sent it to Gilles to make a mask for me. I look at also facial generation, how new technology, for example, MetaHumans and Blender, provide ways to create these fake faces, this digital twin, which, as I'll tell you later, will be entangled with facial recognition again. I molded my face. I made a silicone cast of my face, in a way because while looking at all these practices, I'm amazed at how my face is how faces are flexible, they're dynamic, they are constantly moving, and they're 3-dimensional. And all these systems that I saw of interpreting faces mostly are based on 2D images. And does these systems do us justice? Can these systems really tell what they reportedly are able to do? I felt like our faces are constantly stuck between two regimes. It's stuck between mathematical patterns and prescriptive rules. It's stuck between the patterns of facial landmarks and the prescriptive rules of what each mole on my face means. And that even though they are very different systems, they have different languages, but they seems to have this sort of irrationality in them. And that underneath this irrationality is this blind faith with this kind of sacredness of this system, the sacred geometry, the sacred power, the sacred ways of how nature works. And with this, I submitted this to Foam Talent, and I got really lucky that with this like really new project and these images, I had my first exhibition in Foam Museum, at the Foam Museum. And for the show, I made a multi-channel video essay. Here you can see in the middle, it's a straightforward documentation of the face reading session. And on both sides, on the left side, I have my friend Samra Sabanovic, who keep adding moles on my face. She's dipping the pointer in ink and then adding moles on my face. And the patterns, of course, is a reference to the mole diagram. And with each dot she made, the narration is just explaining what that mole means. And on the opposite side, it's facial landmarks. I put 68 facial landmarks on my face, at which each time Samra points at my face, I remove one of them. So the multi-channel video essay is exhibited alongside photographs, and then a 3D printed face mask. So after the exhibition, this is around 2 years after I started to have the idea of doing a project like this. I started looking at making more images, and I'm experimenting with different ways of making images and how to work and combine text and images. Sometimes really literally. In this case, I'm literally printing facial physiognomic text on matte photo paper using a UV printer. Because for me, it's important to have text and to have other sorts of material to support these images, just as our faces is read not only just visually, but it's also interpreted by these kind of text, or maybe or some kind of unsaid rules within a society. These kind of invisible texts that confined and restricted what one can interpret from a face and what one is reading from a face. So face itself is both an image and a language. The blue one, I printed the text on the blue one. It's the physiognomic text from Bond's Practical Character Reader, the one that I showed earlier. And these ones are interpretive rules of judging an eye. So in this image, maybe you can't really see quite clearly, but one of the rules would be set eyes which are large, open, and clearly transparent denote 5 qualities. And 2 of those qualities are irritability, and then the second one is elegance and taste. So these qualities that seems to contradict each other, but it's what a clear eye suggests. The other red one, I used interpretive text from Chinese physiognomic text, but it's also the same topic. It's also on the same topic as on interpreting eyes. Then I started to go broader with just making images and my own images. I started to delve into image research. In this case, I'm collecting physiognomic images, facial recognition, computer vision paper, mole diagrams, and then composite portrait just to combine all these, just to contextualize what face reading and facial recognition is among all these facial interpreted practices. I organizes my thought also in diagrams like this, because I see face reading and facial recognition not as two distinct regimes, but the more I look into it, the more I see that it's almost like they are a cycle. There's more similarities and differences between the two, between definition and pattern recognition, between astrology. I'm looking at astrology, which has kind of, you can also connect astrology to both, to face reading and facial recognition. The use of within astrology, the way of like analyzing dots in this case in the sky, analyzing stars, analyzing the trajectory of celestial bodies, and try to draw lines to connect them so that you see patterns and you can predict future events based on these patterns. And I started making more and more these kind of Abi Warburg-esque panels. Right now I have 8 of them. Each of them is themed around what I showed you, the 8 major themes. This one is on physiognomy. I find this one very interesting, as in on the top left, you'll see 3 figures with a very long forehead. This figure is the deity. It's a representation of a deity of longevity in Taoist mythology. So according to Taoist mythology, having a long earlobe and long forehead is a sign of luck. But then, of course, if you look in the West, there's also ways or schematics that instructs you how to judge someone's forehead or head shape. In this case, your head shape might resemble more of a looker or a thinker. Then lines on the left and dots on the right. What lines on our faces and dots on our faces mean, and how it becomes the language through which we kind of justify our beliefs. And the right one about dots, I really like this combination of dots, facial landmarks, and then moles, but also stars in the sky. And on the top left corner, the diagram is from a computer vision paper. And what this graph is plotting is all the facial landmarks from a data set that is superimposed onto one image, just to show the distribution of facial feature within a certain computer vision data set. Then I look at definition, facial recognition, facial reading. I would put them among other definition technique, with palm readings, with there's even fortune telling using not just a palm, but like the shape of an animal or the form of an animal, in this case, a cow. This one, and looking at all those images, I sometimes find really interesting composition and connection. In this case, these 3 found images that I found. One is from, on the left-hand side, it's of facial recognition from the National Institute of Standard and Technology. In the middle is anthropological photo. I think this one is probably either from Harvard or from a Swedish anthropological museum. This one, it's a face reader in China. And then the image on the most right is of Lavater's doing a silhouette portrait. I like how the composition kind of visually is so similar. It's almost like they're repeating each other. It seems like we're repeating, we keep asking others, people or machine, what our face means. Either we are asking a group of cameras, the computer, or we're asking a face reader, or we're asking a physiognomist what our face means. And then I write out I wrote them out. I wrote out my ideas. I wrote an essay for the Photographers Gallery in the online blog on thinking photography. This essay is on the development from face reading to synthetic facial data, which are computer-generated faces, so deep fakes that are being created and used as training data for facial recognition system. And then I also wrote more about what I call facial linguistics, how, which is related to the questions that I want to ask all you guys tonight, is that it seems like there are certain phrases that is literally like facial feature, but we use it as a metaphor or analogy to describe someone's personality. For example, nosy as a descriptor of someone who's being too curious and really getting too curious in other people's businesses. And as I was looking back, I was also looking forward into the future. I'm looking at synthetic facial data. This paper or this paper is on Digiface 1 million. It's a huge data set published by Microsoft. It comprises of a lot of almost millions of faces, of computer-generated faces. And what these faces are for is the paper proposed that we can computer vision or facial recognition can use these faces instead of real human faces to train facial recognition algorithms. And that is because for them, there are a few reasons why they think this is better than real human faces. One of them is that they are completely customizable. So you can customize facial feature, facial hair, and facial composition in your data set. The other reason that they're proposing this is that it can circumvent privacy issues. So because all these faces are fake faces, it won't, it doesn't need any consent. So in a way, what they're proposing is almost, it's a way to circumvent the problematics of using real human faces. But whether these data would be as accurate or as valid as a data set for training facial recognition system, we don't know yet. They propose that, or they suggest that it can, but I think for me, I'm very skeptical. What do you see here? It's a company called DataGen, which now went bankrupt. But back in 2020, I took this screenshot in 2022, and it's in the interface where what I'm showing you is like it's the interface, and you can generate any faces you want. You can everything is parameterized. You can and with every faces, because it's computer generated, it comes automatically with like landmarks and image segmentations, which means that you don't even need Amazon Mechanical Turks to even verify the data. It's automatically generated. And with that, I looked at, I started scanning my faces. I looked at what 3D and synthetic faces means to facial recognition.
Magic is the technology of imagination, and technology is magic made tangible. The interfaces of prediction. What is a face? This is my face.
There's so many software, and it's very accessible to make a digital twin of any faces at this point. So besides making images, I started performing image research. I call this desktop performative lecture, where sometimes I write customized software. In this case, I'm it is a real-time facial recognition algorithm that's running on my webcam, and I'm doing basically a show and tell. So I'm subjecting the inventor, like photos or portraits of inventors of facial recognition, for example, in this case, Woodrow Bezos, to its own invention, and kind of analyze what their faces mean. In a way, also in the talk, I also talk about these kind of irrationality that is embedded in these systems. More collages. These ones I use ID photos of myself that I have from different ages, and I put them in a collage with snippets, paper cuts of from the Chinese almanac. These are calendars that basically contain horoscopes and will suggest things that you should do or should not do on each day. So some people in Hong Kong would actually use it to decide what day to get married or when to hold a funeral. And I began to try different ways of making images. On the left, you can see it's a Western mole diagram. That's right. Mole diagram is not something that only was popular in Hong Kong, but also in the West. It was revived by an English astrologer called Richard Saunders. Same idea, different moles have different meanings. And I made them into wood press prints, a reference to ancient Chinese literature where a lot of them are carved into stone and replicated by ink rubbing or by printing. So towards the end, most recently, this is the image that I made. It's from one kind of dot, the dots that started the whole thing with the help of my friend in the studio. Back to the starting point, which is the facial recognition landmarks. And I have an upcoming, with this, I have an upcoming exhibition opening next year in February. So if you're in Berlin, please come and visit. And to end, this is my questions. Do you have words in your culture that use facial features as a metaphor descriptor for a person's character? This is a question that I have been asking my friends for a long time. English, we have the word nosy and cheeky. In Finnish, teräväkielinen literally means sharp-tongued. It's used to describe people that very critical or use harsh language towards others. And then both in Chinese and in traditional Chinese and Korean, brow like a mouse brow, a snake eye means a suspicious person. So I'm very curious what the participants in this presentation have for me.
Thank you, Sheung. Maybe while we answer some questions, also people can share this at the same time. So we're using the Q&A function. Maybe can you leave the question on the screen so that people remember? Go back one slide. Can you? Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. So there's a question. Thank you so much for this presentation. And there's a first question from Bill who's saying over 50 or 60 years old, our facial features will change. How do readings change, or do they change? And I also wonder what if someone has cosmetic surgery on their face, will the face reading become different?
That's a great question. There's a discussion about whether cosmetic surgery will change your fate according to face reading. There are actually cases of people that altered their faces with cosmetic surgeries in an attempt to change their fate. I don't know if it will. I don't know if that's the case, but there's a counter argument that yes, if you actively change your face, your fate will change just because.
Really?
Well, not because of anything that's magical, but it's on the fact that people interpret you differently and see you differently. You give different first impressions. So, of course, then you may make new connections or not, and that will kind of change the course of your life. So it's arguable, or there's no solid answer to this. As with all of these kind of like esoteric practices, it's really on your own interpretation and your own psychology of what changing your face how that would impact you.
I understand. It's quite fascinating, actually. There's a question from Tudor who's asking, saying it's great to see your work through different mediums of imagining that correspond to the different ideas of reading faces. How do you think and achieve a consistency when making an edit to publish exhibit?
Oh, that's a difficult question. Consistency in what sense? Because I guess I'm just experimenting with different mediums, and I don't particularly kind of centered I mean, I'm a photographer, I'm an image-based artist, but I'm also not only centered on photography as a medium. So with making edit to publish or exhibit, I don't quite understand this question. Maybe if you'd like to clarify
Tudor, I
that.
think for me, the way I understand it, but Tudor, tell me if I'm misreading it. I would say, you know, there is there's a huge part of research in your work, and then you bring all of these different element into images, which is in your presentation was the making the pictures part. How do you have that consistency in all of the different pictures you choose, and then how do you bring this then from like concept in the studio to the exhibition part and the publishing part? Tudor, is that correct? I think that's correct. We can start with that at least. Does that help?
Not really. Is there like a solid example?
This is the limitation of webinars. We can't have a chat, really.
Yeah.
But we can maybe, let's see if Tudor gives us more. No, he confirmed that it was correct. So I don't know what would be the more concrete example. I guess it's like, how did you decide in terms of the aesthetic of the work? There were so many options for it. How did you come and found that specific aesthetic in the making of the images?
I guess part of it comes from just the image research, where I see all these repetitive motifs, like the dots, the lines, the text being a really important part of how that would change the meaning of a diagram completely. So and then looking at how these visual elements work together. And then I'm kind of appropriating the visual language, but then also building my own, sometimes not necessarily mocking it, but appropriating it in a different context. Or what if I use the mole diagram on facial recognition images or data sets? What does that mean? Or kind of changing, using I guess the consistency in this case for me, is the dots and the symbols that it's kind of put on diagrams of faces or image of faces. And then my work would be to do a mix-up. I mix up the facial landmark with the mole diagram. Does that matter if does that change the meaning of the other image? If it's an image from a computer vision paper, if I kind of appropriate or added like facial, like the mole diagram on it, how would that kind of play with the assumptions of what that image means? So I guess that is not particularly a visual aesthetic, but it's like a strategy, I guess. And then the aesthetic is kind of built from that strategy of confusing people or mixing up different visual languages.
I understand. Thank you.
I don't know if I've answered to this
Yes.
question, but
You have. Thank you. There's Paloma in the chat who's shared one example of a word in her culture. She says it's cara de pau, something like wooden face in Brazilian Portuguese, meaning is an inconvenient person who doesn't have a good sense of common etiquette or consideration for other people.
yes, thank you. That is going on my list. I have a growing list of what I call facial linguistics, and this is one good example. Thank you. Thank you, Paloma.
Then there's Jenny. In Finnish, we say that someone has a lot of forehead, otsa, when that person is rude or disrespectful.
Hi, Yanni.
There is another person asking a question. They'd like to know what images, mainly stage photos, mean in your research-based work. Do you see them as illustrative references for a visual essay or as independent artworks in their own right?
It depends case by case. I would say, for example, the video essay of me kind of putting dots on my face and removing the dots, say, as staged, that would be, I think, a performative artwork in its own right. The earlier work that I made for Foam, that I submitted to Foam, they're probably more like illustrative references or illustrative references that kind of show a certain part of research that I've done and put them into a photographic form. And I use my faces, or I do a lot of self-portrait in this project just because I don't want to put another person's faces, another person's faces into these. So I think the safest and the most comfortable way for me to do this is just to use my face, because I can at least because I know that sometimes you lose control of an image, but in this case, if I lose control of an image, it's still my face. So I'll be kind of it'll be me if anything happens to the image, it'll be me that bear the consequences.
Yes, that makes sense. From Maria, have you noticed racial face characteristics that match with stereotypical traits we assign to certain races, nationalities? By the way, in Greece, and then in Greece, we say that
Yes.
people with a big forehead are honest people. So it's the opposite of the Finnish one.
Yes. I'm so interested in this kind of facial linguistics just because I felt like some of them, probably the etymology of them, or like the source of how these meaning comes to be, it's passed down, right? And then it's lost. So no one can really pinpoint the moment why a big clean forehead means an honest person in Greek culture. But if someone can did pinpoint that, it'll be great. But also it probably also pass down as certain kind of social prejudice that becomes naturalized and it becomes part of the language. And I think that's very telling of what kind of stereotype or stereotypical thought about a certain facial feature we have. It's very revealing of every culture, like what we consider like is a forehead about its forehead, it represents honesty, or like your nose represent honesty, where this stereotypical images comes from.
So you would say that yes, it really comes with like stereotypical ideas of what certain nationalities or races might be, depending on how they look like.
Totally. I mean, I didn't touch a lot in my project, but obviously facial recognition, and then you can trace facial recognition back to physiognomy. Physiognomy is a pseudoscience, and it has been appropriated by racial scientists to justify, for example, like white superiority, basically, and how like Nordic features or certain racial features is considered intelligence and others is considered primitive or not civilized. And it's a whole dark side of face reading and facial recognition and within all this. which I think a lot of my contemporary colleagues has kind of commented on it or made a work based on these ideas already. I mean, another idea is obviously surveillance. So Marcel Top has made a work about French police mass surveillance on protesters using facial recognition algorithms. My approach is more towards cosmology and looking at the underbelly of what supports these beliefs.
Yes, that makes sense. And there is a question from someone asking, I often find it difficult to translate complex text-based research into a visual form, and I'm unsure how to decide what should be expressed and what can be left out. Do you feel that the visuals you have done effectively convey the ideas you've discussed? I guess is this like, what was the research process coming into the actual making of the images working for you?
Well, this is the constant questions I'm asking myself of, I mean, like the literal printing the text on the images is something that I did, and I don't think I'll keep doing it, but being a research-based person, I'm constantly kind of struggling, like how do I translate what I have read into something that's visual, but also it means something. It's not just a beautiful image that people walk past and look at it and walk past it. That's why I work with collage. That's why I work with panels, because I think the intertextuality between different images matters a lot to me. The context matters a lot to me. So a lot of my work, instead of literally I've experimented with literally putting text on an image. And then now I'm also into what kind of context and just exposing the context or the network of images that connects to one images. I think just doing that already has the value of it itself is already a valuable thing to do, putting different visual materials together. And then another way I do, of course, is like video essay, performative lecture, and books, which you can do it in a more narrative form, and you can really curate your text and how you want other people to read your image. I particularly like photo book for this reason, because it gives people longer time to ponder upon and linger on images and text.
That's a very nice and honest answer. It's it's the struggle is real, but I feel like it's also very I don't know, there is a very beautiful and quite efficient way of presenting this whole work through these different stages that you showed us. A question from Byron asking, do you feel this project is completed? And if not, what constitutes completion to you? And do you see this project as a book?
I'm still working on the project, so it's not completed. What constitutes completion to me? Oh, when I don't want to talk about it, I think it's a good litmus test of the end of a project. But for me, this project is so broad. It goes back into thousands of human history, and then it's still the development is still ongoing with synthetic facial data, and how these techniques is constantly kind of, they are recycled again and again in a new form, in a new shell, with new technology and new media. So if I'm not kind of bored with it, I can really continue it on for at least like 5 more years, if not like decades. Do I see the project as a book? Yes, I'm working on one with CO Berlin. You'll see it next year.
Nice. And one last question from Maria. Do you think that computer-generated faces or other practices can positively affect facial recognition into making it less racist?
That's an argument. That's actually an argument a lot of computer scientists use on that they propose that if we have more diverse data sets, more racially balanced or gender balanced data set, that will create a better and more accurate and more fair facial recognition algorithms. That could be true, but I think the problem is with facial recognition itself. It's not how accurate it is, who is using it. And right now I think facial recognition, especially used by authoritarian government and police states, are targeting. They are there not to target minorities, to target like there's with I think 7 years ago, for example, Chinese facial recognition companies are using this technology on Uyghurs and like Chinese minorities. And so I don't think computer generated faces, if it can possibly affect facial recognition into becoming less racist, it's on the performance maybe, but not in how it's applied and used. So again, that's why I'm interested in the underbelly or this kind of like beliefs and prejudice, social prejudice beliefs and the world view of what these systems means. Because it's not about a better algorithm, it's about I guess I'm an abortionist. What do you call it? Abortionalist. Like I think
Abolitionist.
we should abolitionist. Like I want to abolish. I think if not abolish, it should be heavily regulated, and people who use this technology needs to be they have to be responsible for they'll be taken into the accountability of using facial recognition. Basically, it's what I would propose. So.
And I have one question, if that's okay, myself.
Yeah.
So, I feel through your work, we see that both, facial recognition, face readings, there is this big belief, you use the word belief, that we can see so much in the human faces, no? We can understand so much about people's personalities and identities. And I wonder, after all this time looking at yourself and thinking about it, what did you see?
Yeah. I think I did the opposite, which is I'm constantly wondering what other people sees from my face. Because right now I'm very conscious about judging people by, I mean, obviously during this project, I'm like, yes, there's this connotation with what this person looks like this, and maybe that we kind of have this stereotypical image of what certain people would be as a person. I'm trying to avoid that. And now I'm very curious of like how different systems look at my face. And now knowing all these, I'm collecting all these different vocabulary from different cultures, right? So when I'm in Greek, maybe I'm like, is my forehead big enough? Do I look like an honest person if I go to Athens? So I don't know. Like, do I look like an honest person? That kind of becomes, because even in Hong Kong, I've been constantly, my grandma just said I'm a good eater because I have a mole here. And now I see that, every culture has its own different things that they look at.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Sean.
Thank you, Jasania, Anna.
Thank you so much, everyone, as well, for your questions and for sharing these anecdotes. I will send the recording by email. I will also share all of the details if you want to contact Sean, and then if you want to share more facial, I don't know, identity, cultural information about your own countries. And we will be back for the next Future Artist Spotlight in 1 month. On the 15th of October, you can find the information on the website. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye, Anna.
Thank
Bye,
you,
Sean.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.